to this as soon as we can. So at this time, let the record show that all 6 board members are here. Mrs. Grill had to leave. And just so that the public's aware of what we're dealing with, this is a mandated issue that we have to deal with based upon legislation that came out of Tallahassee on adoption of materials. So Dr. Vosa, and we have no speakers.
I'm going to ask Keith Oswald and Diana Fetterman to introduce the topic for public hearing, instructional materials proposed adoption.
And thank you, Dr. Vosa, and also join us, Bill Pertel, manager for instructional materials. We workshopped a couple months ago about a change in instructional materials where we must have a public hearing on the adoption of materials that we will bring forward to the board in an upcoming board meeting for adoption. So this is a new procedure that we have not done in the past. So again, this is just about to allow for public speakers to come forward to voice any concerns that they may have or comments they want to have about the adoption. So I don't believe we have any speakers for this. So we're just going to, Ms. Fetterman's going to quickly kind of just go through the process of what has occurred thus far.
So at this point, we are having our public hearing so we can share what materials that the team has selected. And then we will come back before the board in March in order to request approval for the recommended K-12 science instructional materials. Just so you know a little bit of background, last summer committee members met in order to make the selections of the instructional materials. Public notice was disseminated, and team members, as well as teachers, community members, parents, were able to come view the instructional materials and offer input and feedback. In order to select our elementary instructional materials, there were 13 elementary school teachers that were there, including making sure we had represented dual language schools, schools from various regions, ESE department, the multicultural department, and a community member. Additionally, team members from the science curriculum team and from the African American, Latino, and gender studies team were there in order to provide feedback. You can see the representation on the middle school committee and the representation on the high school committee. Together, they have offered these recommendations, as you can see, for each of the courses that the state will support adopting instructional materials for and their selections.
So
And we had no speakers, so unless there are any questions from the board, we'll adjourn this part of the meeting and go back to our workshop. And Mr. Barbieri had asked for the floor. So Mr. Barbieri.
I know that earlier we heard that there's monthly portfolio meetings by the instructional superintendents. So, until we can figure out how to fix a broken system, maybe not everybody agrees it's broken, but I do think it's broken. But the teachers, I think the instructional superintendents need to have the principals they need to share the information with respect to, in my district I have 21 schools. I think most of them are A-rated schools. When those principals get together, they should see that Principal A had, 75% teachers highly effective, and Principal B only had 40%. And they need to see the differences so that they can start figuring out what they're doing differently. I know we probably can't do that system-wide because we have 180-some schools, but certainly in those instructional portfolio meetings, we have our teachers work collaboratively so they can figure out what works and what doesn't. I think the principals could do that part of it at those portfolio meetings and maybe start helping. And I don't blame the principals for this because they all have their own makeup, and so their subjectivity is not going to be the same, but at least if they see the differences, they can start asking questions and figure out why there's a difference in the schools.
Agreed, and we've been doing some of that. We need to do more of that.
Yes.
In my previous district, we had folks have to pass an assessment every year. So you'd sit in an auditorium, the assistant principals would watch a 15-minute video of teachers teaching. We would say, what did you see? What didn't you see? What would you like to do better? And slowly but surely you begin to get more calibration where people begin to say, okay, I get that. The downside of that, and here's the part where it's so hard to tease out, You could be in some schools where children sit in perfect little lines and we think teaching is happening, right? Whereas in urban environment or areas where, little boys don't want to sit down and sitting at, at the table, they're talking, they're fussing, and they're doing this and that, and there's some assumptions that are made. So yes, we do some of that training. Yes, there's some instructional rounds. We need to do more of it, but we need to go back to the instrument itself, because I think one of the board members tonight said that what parts in terms of variation might we be able to make some changes on? Should it really be 57%? Can it go down a little bit lower? Can we find something that's more of a sort of middle ground approach? So lots more discussion. We'll continue to work with Jenk and get their feedback and ideas. And let's not forget, this isn't new. When we changed from reading running records to iReady, that was decided by the group. There were also teachers in that group who felt like the K2 teachers were feathering their nests because reading running records were too easy, okay? I heard those complaints. So this goes both ways. It's not as simple as one system will solve all issues.
Mrs. Andrews?
And thank you. And as I read the moving forward pieces that you have here, I recognize we're all working on it, but this is so critical that we have to have discussions here at this board level as to almost each step of the way. Because, teachers are being evaluated every single day. We know it's a bad system that's sent down by the state, but we don't want to be sitting here this time next year with teachers saying that, I've got developing, I didn't get highly effective when I should have, and somebody else did it somewhere else. We've got to figure out a way with the pieces that you've given us here. It's just broad here. I'm looking to dig down deep as to what we're going to be doing within the next 30 days, 60 days, because time is of the essence where people are going to be getting their evaluations. And I really want to know, what are we going to do so that we can eliminate some of these same problems, some of these basic problems that we're seeing too, about how one school does it one way and another school does it another way. We've got to find out what is happening that causes this disconnect, where you've got some getting it and some not getting it that should be getting it, and some maybe that's getting the highly effective that maybe shouldn't be getting it. So there's a big disconnect somewhere. So we've got to figure out where that is and how we can kind of stop that, because we're talking about it within the next 6 months. People will be evaluated again, and we don't want to have this same conversation.
I'd like to add just some clarity. Earlier, there were some comments made that somehow, from a budgetary standpoint, central office is telling people how to evaluate people. That is absolutely not true. Mr. Burke and I work hard to find a pot of money, and then that pot of money is divided up. Whether there's 100% highly effective and 0 effective, it's still the same pot of money. I just want to make sure everyone understands that there's never been a directive that we would say there are too many highly effective or not as many highly effective. So I just wanted to put that on the record.
Mrs. Andrews? Finish up, and then Mrs.
And I
McClung.
heard from some Royal Palm Beach High School teachers here today, because that's one of the schools that's in my area. Sometimes we hear about this as board members, so we've got to really keep talking and discussing it, so that if we see something that's kind of skewed some kind of way, that we feel that something's not right, as board members, as the administration, we need to get right on that, because time is of the essence. And it's a little scary to me when I see all the things that we're trying to do. The state has tied our hands on a lot of this. We've just got to really figure out how we can make sure we can identify the best ways we can fix some of this stuff as quickly as possible.
Mrs. McQuinn and Dr. Robinson.
I was going to save this for my board comments later, so I promise I won't make board comments later. And this won't take 3 minutes. I have a thought. Now, please, veteran educators, don't groan when I say FPMS, Florida Performance Measurement System. However, it was not based on test scores, and I'm coming now to Marzano, because Marzano teaching strategies and the professional part of it, not just the teaching strategies, it is research-based. I had the opportunity in one of my retirements to supervise student interns from Palm Beach Atlantic, and so I was able to use the Marzano instrument to determine whether those student teachers passed or not. It's good. It's just good teaching. I think we were hurried as a school district into using something. So why couldn't we? Remember in the old days with FPMS, we had to, all of us, every administrator, every single one, except perhaps the superintendent, every administrator, we watched the videos and we had to score. It was tense. So we had to score those teaching segments. And you passed or you didn't, but it was objective. So I don't know why we could not take the Marzano teaching part. I don't know why we couldn't take that and develop our own test. And I'd leave that to all of you experts to do that, but I really think we could do that. And there are too many elements for a principal to observe with a teacher, but you could, for this teacher who has taught this many years, or it doesn't even matter, but for an individual teacher, well, I'm going to work on these elements this year, I'm going to evaluate you on these elements the following year. I really believe that we could do that. It is objective. It is not using test scores. We don't ask our teachers then to be in competition with each other. How terrible. Don't we want our advanced placement students to all score 5s? Of course we do. And I think, and Marzano already has built-in strategies for development if you don't do well in that area, but it does puts a pass-fail for administrators. And at least it's something objective that everybody would use. Thank you.
Thank you. Dr. Robinson?
Thank you. I think we might, multiple people are saying the same thing, but, and I want all the children to score level 5. I'm just saying. So, okay. So, but to my point, so Marzano's supposed to be research-based, but there's no correlation with what the outcome's supposed to be, which is academic achievements, right? I mean, I'm just saying, if that's what it's supposed to be, that's what I thought it was supposed to be. Okay. So but I need to come back to this, because this is bothering me. So I just need to point out, because I just keep thinking that I'm not reading this correctly. So if we look at effective, so can you go back to that slide? If we look at effective, if you're a first or second year teacher, you have to get greater than 51% of the ratings at level 3 or higher to get effective. But if you're a more seasoned teacher, you have to get greater than 60% at level 2, which is a lower level. See, I thought this was saying 51, 60 at level 3 or above, but it's not. Okay, and so I'm not misreading this, correct? Somebody, okay, I'm just checking because it makes no sense to me. So, okay, I won't even dig into that anymore. So, one more thing, did we ever consider using PYG?
That has been discussed. At the time, the PYG covers the same courses and subjects as the state VAM. We're required to use the VAM, so it wasn't an option for us. It has come up in conversation.
So if you start we can, listen, I remember in 2006 where North Carolina made a test for every single subject. And when you want to talk about a nightmare, you think we test a lot now? It's the same concept, which is, hey, we want to be able to quantify teaching. Let's give them a pre-test and a post-test. Folks have tried that, and it does nothing but chew up more instructional time.
So,
I just will add to that, if you will, that there are districts that are trying to do that, but each of those tests that you introduce become a high-stakes test, has to be kept secure, because now it's being used, it's tied to money and an evaluation. So that's not an avenue that we've pursued. This was initially in 2012 with some urging from the board not to add additional testing.
Yes, so I remember that clearly, right? And I'm not trying to add additional tests. So if we look at all the tests, then we have assessments at the beginning of the school year, right?
We no longer administer a fall diagnostic assessment. That's some of the tests that we eliminated.
Okay.
iReady does a baseline test at the beginning of the year, but we only administer our diagnostics now once a year in the winter.
Well, okay, well, I stand corrected. So one more point, and maybe this is just all theoretical, which is actually why I need that statistics guy to be part of JINC. Okay, I'm
Which
just saying.
statistics
The guy who spoke? No, he's got a degree in,
understood.
like the numbers dude, right?
Yeah,
I mean,
the teacher, yeah.
okay,
yeah.
so,
We actually have a teacher on JINC
okay.
who does just that.
Okay, okay, good. So, I guess, okay, ask the question. I've got too many questions to ask.
Okay. Mrs. Andrews?
Because I'm sitting here, and I know you've got to work with the CTA, the JINC committee, and when are we going to get something to look at it, to say, this is the piece, this is the starting piece? I know it's going to take a while, but this is the starting piece. It's obvious when I look at all this stuff that we have. We've got to get a long way away from this. So when is that going to happen?
So we've had a number of meetings with JINC. We have another one coming up early February that hopefully we can finalize the new focus model and hopefully come to consensus that we agree upon with what we've got there, that it'll be a better system to support our teaching and learning, and then we will begin to roll out a training component to support that. Right now, part of the consensus was that we did not want to put too much out there to our teachers and cause confusion, because right now, this current year, they're being evaluated on the first model that you saw, that map, and we didn't want to cause confusion at this time of the year for our teachers and administrators too early on, and strike the right balance of starting that training later on in the spring. So we can give you an update, we can provide you an update after our next JINC meeting.
All right, thank you. Mrs. McQuinn, it's interesting you brought up FPMS. There may be a few people in the room who do remember that. The interesting part was Dr. Vosa and I had a conversation earlier on that particular thing, and it was a very impartial evaluation system, and some of the things that we heard tonight from teachers on their concerns, it had a separate evaluation for guidance counselors, it had a separate evaluation for media specialists, and the evaluation was tailored to the specifics of the job description for them. So I think that may be one of the possible solutions that we have as we go forward, and it may meet. So I know that, there's a lot of people in the room who I think use that instrument, and it was a very objective instrument when you tallied. So with that, we have two other things to do before this one goes. I believe that one of our speakers came in late, and if the board doesn't mind, Katie Labossiere, can she come and have her 3 minutes? And then Justin Katz has asked for a minute to close. So Ms. Labossiere, and then Mr. Katz.
I apologize for my tardiness. I was tutoring after school.
Can you start the clock over again, please? Thank you.
Thank you. My name is Katie Labossiere. I have proudly been a math teacher for 14 years. I feel the current system of teacher evaluations is deeply flawed. As someone who teaches an EOC class, there is extreme pressure for my students to perform. I am also evaluated on the results of my student growth component. Many teachers are not in the same position I am. Some teachers do not teach a measurable class as there are only 2 math EOCs. The EOC is flawed. The geometry EOC has a bias against any student in which English is not their first language. Most of the questions are given in word problem form, which clearly puts ESOL students at a disadvantage. While there is a waiver option for teachers to allow ESC students to not have to meet the passing requirements, there is no such protection in place for students of other languages. The scores for these ESOL students is factored into a teacher's FAM scores, whereas ESC students who have the waiver are left out. Passing the Algebra 1 EOC is a graduation requirement, while students just have to take the Geometry EOC with no mandate on passing as a graduation requirement. Some students taking the Geometry EOC actually Christmas tree the exam as they feel no pressure to pass the exam. If I'm going to be evaluated based on the results for both tests should be graduation requirements. As a result of the student growth component, teachers that are teaching upper level college-bound students are being pulled from their roles in those classes to teach to the lowest 20%. This results in the higher performing students electing to take math classes that are below the level of their previous last math class taken, taking classes not located on campus, or completely dropping their math class altogether. Teachers are not properly educated on how the evaluation works or how the VAM scores are calculated. For instance, last year, of my 52 students that took the EOC, 50 passed, which is 96% pass rate. If I factor in the one ESE waiver, that brings my pass rate to above a 98%. A fellow teacher had a 100% pass rate. However, neither one of us received a highly effective rating under the student growth component. The current system is also flawed because it offers no protection for students and for teachers who need to take a FMLA leave. In 2016, I missed approximately 4 months of work due to a district-approved FML leave of absence. A math substitute was not put in place, and upon my return, my students had a large learning gap for the time that they were not instruction. Upon receiving my evaluation for that year, I received a needs improvement rating under the student growth. This certainly was not a reflection of my efforts trying to catch my students up for the lack of instruction. The informal evaluations are only 10 minutes long. It is not possible to fit all the requirements into the 10-minute observation period, especially during a 1 hour and 50-minute block class. There is no system of accountability pertaining to the observer. I've had the same observer for the past 14 years. I've never had the opportunity for someone else to observe me. This has led to huge differences in instructional evaluation results across departments, with some departments having almost highly effective ratings and some having very few due to different observers being assigned to different departments. This evidence also rings true when looking at the instructional Thank you. May I?
Okay, go ahead and close out.
This evidence also rings true while looking at the instructional evaluation listed by the FLDOA, Floor Department. One of the best performing schools in our district, Suncoast, is 69.3% of the teachers listed as highly effective, where Boca Raton High School has 94% of their teachers. At Congress Middle, only 6 teachers, that's 9%, are listed as highly effective. Carver, 0 teachers. Boca Raton Middle, 41. Wellington Landing, 87. At the elementary level, Royal Palm has 100% of their teachers as highly effective, where Waters Edge only has 42.6%. The district office has a rating of 94.9% highly effective, with only 5% effective. The teachers.
Okay, can you close out now,
Sure.
please?
And our ability to feed our families is based on our ratings. Teachers with highly effective will receive almost 1% more raise than those with just effective rating. The statistical data I previously spoke about that proves just how unfair this can be and how the school at which you work at can affect your evaluations. I do believe in accountability. I also believe that it should be equal for all. The current system is clearly not working, and I believe that there's too much room for personal discretion. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Mr. Katz?
Thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak here at the end to close things out. I just want to once again thank everybody for having this workshop, for your comments and your supportive comments, and the kind of global recognition that this is a state problem that's been forced on us. And to that effect, I wanted to make sure that I stated that, you know, in my time in this position, working on the Gen Committee, you know, discussing the evolution of the Marzano evaluation system towards the next phase, that the staff that we've worked with here from the district have all been nothing but professionals. They have done everything within their power, given the mandates from the state to work with us to address these problems. The reason for, you know, bringing this or elevating the issue to a higher level is just that staff's not in the position to make the types of decisions that you might be, or to give the direction you might be. So I just wanted to make sure that in the mix of all the negativity that does exist in the current system and disparities, that staff has been, again, nothing but professional, and without their efforts to work with us and negotiate with us in good faith, the progress we're starting to make would simply not be there. So again, I want to tip my hat to them and all of you.
Thank you very much. So with that concludes our workshop topic. So the next item on the agenda is to adjourn the workshop and move into the special meeting. So I'd like to call the special meeting to order